by far, the experience of making Where's My Water was like the best experience I've had in a creative endeavor. It was incredible. It was awesome.
Hey, Tim, how you doing?
Hi, thanks for having me.
So what's your current title and focus right now?
Well, I don't ever have to say a title anymore because I just make my own video games off in a corner now.
Cool.
So I guess I'm a owner of a company or something. I don't know. I'm an indie game developer, and right now that specifically entails two little tiny companies. So I have one company called Walaber Entertainment. My online name almost everywhere on the internet is Walaber, and so that's just been my name I use for stuff I make ever since like high school. And so that company is just like a little tiny LLC that's basically just me. And I make games that are primarily made by myself, although obviously, every game involves some collaboration with other people. But basically, if it's a Walaber release, then it's kind of like a solo-ish game that I've made and comes pretty directly from me. And then one of my collaborators that I worked with on Where's My Water back at Disney, the two of us have like a similar thing called Toyful Games. Toyful, like a start with a toy and then fill it out and figure out what it is the idea behind the name.
Okay.
And we also are just like a tiny little, company making indie games, primarily at this point, focusing on Steam and going to consoles once in a while if the game's like cool enough to deserve it and be worth the time and effort. And so mostly they're sort of premium, not super expensive, modest scoped indie games.
Yeah. And you've been doing it for a while, right?
Yeah. Basically 4-ish years, I think now, something like that, 4 or 5 years. So as Walaber, I have 4 releases on Steam, and Toyful, we have 1 game on Steam and Switch, and then a couple other projects that we've made but aren't like, were for other people kind of thing.
Okay. So looking back, you started at QA Disney, where we were both at.
That's right.
How did that lead to design and creative leadership roles like later in your career, like getting started there in QA?
Yeah, so my origin story is both, I think, pretty common and also kind of unique. Common in the sense that entering from quality assurance, like testing, is a relatively well-known method to get your foot in the door into games, right? Especially larger game companies that are big enough to have testing departments and stuff like that.
Right.
I guess nowadays, some testing may be more outsourced to testing specific companies. So maybe nowadays, if I had gotten hired by one of them, it would be harder to make the jump from being a tester to being a contributing member of a development team or something like that. But in my particular case, this was in 2005. I didn't study games in college. I did go to college, but I went to college to study filmmaking. I thought I was going to be like a director of photography or a film director or something like that. That was my initial thought.
Which is true. I've heard that from other people. Yeah.
Like overlap amongst the industries, I think. In retrospect, what I realize is that I am just very much a hybrid of a creative and technical person. Like I like both of those elements. And I've always gravitated to mediums where you get to use both. And so film is very much that way too. There's a lot of creativity involved in what story you're going to tell, but also how you tell it with different shots and angles and lenses and lighting and editing and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And even things like special effects and stuff always appealed to me. So it turns out games are a much better combination for me, like a perfect combination for me. But I had made games as a hobby all the way from high school, just reading books and early internet forums and like, what was it, like Newsnet or what was it called? The BBSs and stuff before like the World Wide Web, but I would find communities of people and they would help each other out and you learn how to make things and write code for DOS games or stuff like that.
Right.
And so I was always interested in that, but it never occurred to me that it could be a job. And then I got my degree. I also happened to study abroad and learn Japanese. And so by the time I graduated, I had a minor in Japanese and was pretty fluent in Japanese. And that turned out to be something I hadn't planned for, but as part of my college experience was one of the biggest parts of it, was going there, studying abroad, seeing a different culture and learning another language. Anyway,
cool.
And then I went back to Japan after I graduated because I enjoyed being there so much. And I taught English, which is a common thing to do in Japan if you're just trying to, as a foreigner, as a Westerner, trying to just get a job. So I taught English for a little bit. And then I worked as an assistant director for a TV production company and actually did a little bit of my major. And all of the while, I had been making freeware games and posting them on the internet as a hobby. And I had slowly been realizing I really enjoy making games, maybe even more than this TV film stuff. But it never, I wasn't sure what to do with that or how to get a job. I didn't even know much about the industry at all. Anyway, long story short, I end up coming back to the States, and it's a transition time in my life. Okay, I got to get a job back home now. What should I do? And I'm looking around, and I will always try and apply for game stuff. Yeah. And just perfect timing, Disney had posted a job posting for a QA lead, which I didn't know what that was at the time. I knew there was testing, but I didn't know what exactly that was. But they were looking for someone bilingual who spoke Japanese. And that just happened to be the little extra sort of
that narrowed the
skill
pool
that
down.
I had.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Exactly. And so then in retrospect now, I was the absolute ideal candidate for this job. Like I was super passionate about games. I had
Central
made some,
casting.
so I understood it.
Yeah.
And I had just been to Japan. I had worked in Japanese television, which was crazy hours and really hard work ethic, which they were worried, for QA was like you work crazy hours and it's really busy and you have these like spikes of crazy, deadlines and things.
Been there, done that.
And crunch and all that stuff. And so like I was designed for the job,
Totally.
Of course, at the time I was very nervous. Like I hope they pick me,
Right.
But that's how I got my foot in the door. And the reason was they had an upcoming game that was kind of a high priority for them with a Japanese developer. It was this like new IP they were creating called Spectrobes, which was kind of like a Pokemon style game, like find and raise monsters. Disney wanted their game Pokemon, and they came up with this IP, and they were making it with a Japanese developer, so it'd be kind of like an authentic Pokemon style game. And so they needed someone who could like translate the bugs back and forth from English to Japanese and stuff like that, because the QA was going to be in California, but the developer was in Japan. So anyway, that's how I got my foot in the door. And then I worked on that project, and as part of that project, because I could speak Japanese well, I was like somewhat okay helping with communication. I got to be in a lot more meetings than your average QA lead was in, because they kept asking me to come in meetings to just facilitate a little bit, like reading between the lines and helping with communication and stuff. And so I just was a bit more visible than your average QA lead throughout the course of the project. And that led to, they created international producer role, which is kind of like an associate producer, but in Glendale, to be the local expert on all the games being made in other countries. Because they not only had Japan making a few games, but they had the UK making several games, like the ones we talked about before we started recording, like the climax games, the racing games they were making at that point in time, like a Split Second and stuff like that. And so I kind of became the local person who kept up on all those games and could showcase it at milestone reviews. Actually, one thing they ended up having me do a lot was go out on tours with press and be the person who demoed the game on behalf of the team who wasn't local and didn't make the trip for this one demo or whatever.
Right.
So basically QA turned into like it's producer, but I wasn't responsible for much. I was more of like a associate kind of role.
Yeah.
But it was also, again, pretty visible role. Lots of people in the company were meeting me because I was going around helping with a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And all that time I kept making prototypes and pitching ideas for things. Like I was constantly making little prototypes. Like this was around the time the Wii came out, and I made like some weird Wiimote prototypes and stuff like that, and was showing them around people in the office. And I kind of got known as someone who was pretty technical and, could like come up with ideas and implement them. And so that led to eventually an opportunity to switch to become a designer. And that took the form of me moving to Salt Lake to work at Avalanche to work on Toy Story 3. Okay. I went out there to work on Toy Story 3, and I worked on that game. We didn't enjoy living in Salt Lake. So after that project, I was like, I need to come back to California. If I can find a job within Disney and that they can, accommodate that, that'd be great. But if not, we're moving back no matter what, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it just worked out that I ended up working in the sort of like publishing design review department for a little bit. But during this time, I also made this game called Jelly Car, which was like a freeware hobby game I made. Yeah. I put it up on the App Store as like a free game. And it was like quite popular. And around that time, Disney started caring about smartphone games, and they like wanted to make more, App Store games or whatever.
Content
and so
it. Yeah.
I like pitched, how about we make a sequel to this weird game I made, Jelly Car, and ended up basically switching over to the mobile team and then working as a designer, design lead, later design director, later VP of creative in the mobile development part of Disney. So that's the sequence. QA and kind of just meeting people and finding opportunities within a large company, but also has a few weird aspects like the Japanese angle and stuff like that.
yeah, it seems like everything kind of aligned. So no, that's cool. Um, so what do you wish you had known about the industry back then, right? Back in what, 20 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. 20 years ago. Holy cow. Um, yeah, I didn't have really any awareness of the different roles
Right.
involved, and like sort of, I didn't really know about, much at all, like what the difference between publishing and developing, and where marketing lives, and where PR lives, and where legal lives, and like all this kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And I got a kind of a unique view of it because I was at the location in Disney where they did all the publishing stuff.
Hmm.
Not, they didn't do as much development, right? They did
Yeah,
QA,
right.
but they weren't making the games in house there at that point in time when I got hired. Those were external studios in other states and stuff.
Yeah.
And but it was cool because I got a view of like all these different people involved, like
Hmm.
marketing and PR and legal and production and QA, and and
Yeah.
then I got to go visit studios a couple times and that kind of thing, and got a little bit of an idea of what it was like on the development side. But then when I went to Salt Lake, I was pretty surprised just how specialized different people were and what
Yeah.
their different roles were. And I stepped on a few toes when I first joined because I was so enthusiastic and I wanted to share my ideas, and maybe I
Right.
wanted to look like I knew what I was doing or something.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I would make suggestions, and then people would pull me aside and be like, "You're not the art director on this. Like, why are you making an art suggestion?" Or like that kind of stuff. Like, you're stepping on this person's, like, that's
Stay
their
in
job.
your lane, that kind of shit.
Yeah. And it wasn't so much, I don't remember it as being a negative thing, like, oh, this place isn't as collaborative as it should be or something like that. It was actually really, I was very grateful that people pulled me aside and they're like, these people have roles. Like, you need to, you sort of work well with them and not just come in and kind of steamroll stuff. And so that was a big one, just being a little more aware of what all the different roles were, what people do, and how everyone works together. Nowadays, if I wanted to make games, I probably would have gone to some kind of school about it.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe would have had a bit more preparation for that, ideally. But in my case, yeah, I was pretty naive about all the different roles and what people do, and just kind of what even I was. I didn't know like what my role should be. I could code, but I'm maybe not a coder.
Right.
I'm not great at art, but I have an eye for design or whatever. I guess I'm a designer. I don't know. It's like, am I a producer or designer? Like, what should I even be?
Yeah. Yeah.
So some awareness there, I think,
Yeah.
would have been better.
I was at Wide Load, which is owned by Disney, and I was there 2010 to 2014, and it was kind of all hands on deck for Disney Infinity, which was being developed in Salt Lake at Avalanche.
Right.
So I went with one of our designers out there to be on site. It was about a week and a half. And yeah, that's, old school game dev, right? Like, there's...
It was a big team.
It's a big team. It's a big studio. They were bringing like this terrible food during crunch and stuff like that. It was like, this is prison food. And yeah, it was old school, in the QA lab, testing builds, burn the midnight oil, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that had to be a very different environment from coming from, Disney corporate to, Salt Lake City in the trenches, hand-to-hand combat, working in. So that was kind of my perspective. I was like, okay, wow, this is like really old school, hardcore.
Yeah,
game
I'm glad I
dev.
got that experience early, because then later I have the weird, well, I don't know if it's weird, but I started kind of working on bigger games with larger teams. Like my first design roles were on larger games like Toy Story 3, and then slowly got to smaller and smaller teams until today I'm basically like by myself. But like in the middle was mobile, which was 8 people.
Yeah,
maybe,
right.
on a
a
team or
small
something.
team.
And
Yeah.
I mean, the dynamic is so different there, right? In terms of kind of what's needed role wise out of each person, and what kind of like methods of communication and procedures you need or don't need, and all that kind of stuff, how much you need to document things, like all that,
Right.
is very different. So that's also just an interesting thing to realize, is that games have such a wide range. Like you can make a game with, 500 people, and it's this crazy complex machine that's very hard to manage, and hard to steer that ship because it's so big, all the way down to one person can just like make a weird thing and put it out there, and everything between. So
Right. Yeah.
It's
like, between like a battleship and a speedboat, right? Like,
Yeah.
And when you're trying to make those turns, the speedboat can do it, and the battleship's is like,
you got to plan a long way ahead in time to miss the glacier,
Yeah. You need an army of people just to steer the damn thing. I've seen that evolution too. For someone like getting into the industry now, like how has entry level roles changed, and what should they focus on? Like any kind of general advice, because it has changed
Yeah,
a lot.
I do feel a little bit like lacking in qualifications on this because my recent history is so divorced from trying to
Right.
bring in new people or sort of see that perspective super clearly. But I do think that the QA route that I was able to have probably still exists, but I would imagine it's a little bit less frequent of an occurrence.
Because there's so much outsourcing and overseas.
Yeah, like there's just big studios and big publishers. There aren't as many of them as there used to be, and the ones that do have implemented different procedures and stuff. And so, I mean, not to mention QA, but even other things like art and other disciplines are more and more sort of spread out and use contractors and use different things. And so having like a single building where you could walk in one day as a QA person and then walk in the next day and be a producer or something is probably
totally changed.
Kind of rare now. I think the thing that I've would guess is maybe a bit more like has a higher chance of working is learning more about the industry before and having a sense of what you're good at or what you want to do, and then preparing yourself to be attractive to some kind of entry-level opportunity in that particular domain, you know? So like, for example, I kind of mostly, I guess, a game designer, and I guess probably the main role, I guess, I sort of have. And so that route, I would imagine if I was doing it today, I would probably want to be either making my own tiny games using all the various methods you can do that these days, you know, whether it's Scratch or whether it's inside Roblox or whether it's in Fortnite or just using little game engines and stuff. Making my own little things and then trying to use that to showcase my talents and go find opportunities at, you know, companies that need help making stuff. And, you know, or if I was an artist, to be a similar kind of thing, like maybe I'd be trying to make, you know, game jam projects with other people I can find and then using that as a showcase and trying to, you know, get my foot in the door somewhere where those kind of specific skills would be useful. And that's a super general answer, right? But the difference from when I was younger is I didn't really know much about the industry, what the different roles were, and still able to kind of learn that after getting my foot in the door because of the QA opportunity. Whereas today, I think that's probably less advisable to bet on, and it would probably be smarter to learn more about the industry, try making some games so you understand a little bit more about what it takes to make one, and then what you want to do.
I came up through QA too in the early 90s, and it was interesting because you got to see how the sausage is made, as they say, right? So you got to see how all these roles work and how different departments kind of work and the pros and the cons and the quirks, and you know, you got to see behind the curtain, you know, and then, back then it was like, okay, I'm in this role, but my skills tend to blend this way or go that way. So then you try and find mentors and go that way and forge your path that way. But now.
Hey, if you're finding this interesting, please click the like and subscribe button so the YouTube algorithms know and I can help spread the show. Thanks.
I think it's about, you got a portfolio. You have to have playable demos, especially like in design. You know, it's just harder. The competition's higher, but you know, there are more companies than there were in the 90s too, but then maybe not so much on the publisher side. So
there's a lot more learning materials out there though, for sure. So I mean, even if you don't go to a paid school of some kind to learn, you can certainly prepare yourself pretty
there's
well,
so much online
with all the information that's out there, all the materials and things you can do and be a part of and participate in and stuff like that. So that's a cool development, you know, that I think wasn't necessarily
very much
there
so.
Back in the day.
None of those options were there back then. And any thoughts, you know, for someone in the industry right now wanting to advance their career?
I mean, I've had this weird sequence. I mean, now, you know, I'm independent, so it's got its own thing. But at Disney, I had an amazing 11-year run of just continually getting opportunities. And I know that is somewhat rare. I saw other people, like peers of mine, who were super smart and good at their jobs and talented and stuff, who kind of couldn't find that next role. In fact, while I was at Disney, a common pattern that you would see is someone would leave to go to a different company so they could finally get the job up next, right? Like they're a associate producer here. They leave because they got hired to be a producer over at some other company. They stay at that company for a couple years, and then they end up getting hired back to Disney, and they've skipped 2 levels. There was no way for them to get there internally. You know, I definitely saw that happen a lot. And I was the weird scenario that somehow just gotten it to work internally inside the company. My story is that I kept getting offered a new job before I felt I was ready for it. I was like, you sure you think I can do that now? And I put that on that I had great bosses, you know, who were like noticing something that I could do, and then were making the effort to sort of set me up for something or give me those opportunities. And so, I guess, I don't know how, that's not really in your own control to have a great boss, but to the degree you can find cool people to work for, that's a benefit. The other thing I think looking back on it is that I naturally, and not in a I am scheming to get something kind of a way, but I just had a lot of natural enthusiasm, and I would constantly kind of go a little bit outside my job to show ideas I had, or like put together a little presentation of something I thought up that could be cool or whatever. Like, and it always came from a place of just genuine interest and enthusiasm, not from I'm scheming to get an outcome I'm looking for. But in retrospect, it just meant that people were able to see that I could do things that weren't part of my current role. And I think that was very useful. You know, like when I was in QA, I was making these prototypes and stuff on my own. I would show them to people, and they'd be like, "You coded that?" You know, I did. Yeah. You know, and they're like, "Oh, you can,"
which is
do that,
rare,
you know?
for QA. Just to say
like,
that.
I mean, there was no reason in my job that they would ever know that I had that skill. And so I guess to the degree I can sort of package up my experience into advice, it would be to, if you're not quite in the role that you think you should be, and you're capable of the other role, then find ways that aren't manipulative, but to sort of demonstrate your capacity, you know, and do it in a way that's more just putting the information out there in the world so that the good bosses in the world can notice it, you know?
Having, you know, enthusiasm, you know, which some people underestimate, but it means something, and then some ambition, right? And then, you know, because like these things it's always like there's some meeting like, oh shit, we got to do what, and what about who's going to do this, right? And then it's oh yeah, that person that was doing this and this, they showed some capacity, they showed a motivation. Let's give it to them, right? Like those kind of things, you know, that's how those things happen, right? Because there's some thing going on and they need someone, and they're like, well, who do we got? And they're, you know, looking at the roster and like, oh yeah, you know, Tim did that stuff. Let's give them a shot at this. So people kind of undersell or underthink that skill. So now, you know, on the indie side, like personally, like this is a big one, but like what was that shift, you know, from being like later as design director and in large companies like at Disney and Universal to doing solo indie dev, right? Like that's huge. What was that like?
Yeah, it's been pretty great. It's
great.
scary. Of course, it's extremely scary. I mean, you know, I should have done this way earlier. Like, so I had made all these games, like freeware games, and I kind of, you know, I could make a
high
game
school.
by
That's
myself.
impressive. Yeah.
Right. Like I knew I could code and I could do enough art to get by or whatever, and I could make little games. And, but then I got this amazing job at Disney, and I just kept getting these opportunities. And in parallel to that, my personal life, you know, I was like, we had kids and like, you know, started to have more fiscal responsibilities and stuff like that. And so the Disney job was fantastic because it was
why would you leave that? You know, amazing insurance, and you get salary bumps.
Yeah, good benefits.
Disney takes care of employees.
And I wasn't unhappy. You know, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I know I got a paycheck, but I don't like this job or something. It was fun and I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Although I was just a never-ending fountain of ideas that did not work at Disney. You know, the pattern for me was I would have kind of small-scale weird ideas. And I'd be like, oh, we could make this cool little game like with Mickey or whatever, like this or like that. And a lot of them were like, everyone was like, yeah, that's a really great idea. That doesn't fit here. It's not big enough to be worth anything, or it doesn't align with any of our current initiatives or whatever. And so there was a eternal frustration that I had ideas that were good ideas, but just had no outlet there. And in and amongst all of that, I did make my one game, Jelly Car, which is this weird thing where I made it as a hobby game, released it as a freeware game, but then pitched it internally to Disney, and it got picked up to become a Disney game. So Disney sort of swallowed it up, and now I was intentional. I chose to do that, you know, like I pitched it internally. And then we made sequels and stuff, and that's how I got the studio that I was the design director of, that then made Where's My Water, which is the most popular game I've ever been a part of.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, that was amazing. But in retrospect, the instant I had Jellycar, like I should have left Disney and made Jellycar myself. And then I would have been more like the Temple Run dude, the guy who made Temple Run and like made a real good bit of money off of their cool game that was at the right place at the right time. And Jellycar was kind of like that.
Yeah, physics, and that was like a big
and it was a
thing back
successful
then.
early App Store game. And like, if I had released it myself, then the sales would have been a tremendous amount of money for a single person.
Right.
They were a noteworthy footnote amount of money for Disney.
Right.
Like, oh, that's cute. That's fun. That happened.
Right.
Kind of thing.
Right. I learned too, right? Like, it doesn't matter if you got, home run. Like, we want grand slams. It's not a grand slam, we don't get out of bed, right? Like, so.
Yeah, and it makes sense. It's a huge company, like, then they have a lot of overhead and the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm very grateful to Jellycar because it led to career opportunities that were really, really valuable. But it did mean that I ended up staying at Disney, and it started to switch over the last 5 years or so, where I was enjoying the job a little bit less. I could kind of smell that Disney wasn't as invested in the games, especially internal development, which is what I was most interested in.
Yeah, internal, right. Yeah.
Like the winds were blowing towards maybe they're not going to want to make games in-house anymore.
Right.
And so my job was starting to get less interesting, and the games we were choosing to make were more compromisey and more like, I don't know. It just wasn't as fun as it was back when we made Where's My Water.
Yeah.
And so that was building up, but I could never quite make the call to be like, well, let's just leave and make my own stuff.
Right.
Eventually I left and did a half measure, which is that I left to go to Universal. Universal was starting a group that was really similar to the group I was in at Disney when I left. So it was kind of a lateral slide. It was like the same job, just switched companies.
Glendale area too, right? So you didn't.
Yeah, it was like, go from Glendale to Universal City or whatever. 20 minutes away.
20 minutes, right?
And but because I was like slightly being recruited to come over there, I had a tiny bit of like negotiation power, and so I was able to get a thing where I was like, can I make my own little games on the side as long as we put them in a box where it's obvious they don't conflict with the day job.
Oh yeah, right.
And we were able to work it out to where I was like, okay, while I'm here, I can start my indie experiment with the relative safety of my day job, and I won't get a lot done because I'll be doing it in after hours and stuff, but I can start,
Right.
And so while I was there, I started working on my first like indie project, and I never ended up releasing it while I was at Universal, but the Universal thing only lasted a couple of years, and then we got laid off, like everyone did. And that provided me this big opportunity of, okay, you got a little window of time because there's a layoff. You get a little bit of like, couple months of salary or whatever kind of deal. So I was like, okay, I got a little window of time, and I've already got this game that's almost done that I was making as like a side, project. So why don't I just finish that up and then, I don't know, see if I can make this indie thing go. It was a delayed jump off the cliff, and then I took a push of a layoff to get me to even do it at all. I feel like I was overly conservative with the whole thing.
Right.
But it's still very scary because now it's like, man, if I make a game and it doesn't do very well, that's not good. I won't make any money. But at the same time, my schedule is super flexible. I work at home. I get to be way more around my kids and go do all their things, and I can just pick up and go anywhere when I need to do something with the kids, that kind of stuff. That's great.
Right.
My favorite part of making games is the making part. All the meetings and stuff around it weren't the most fun. And I don't have meetings anymore. I just make all day because I don't really have to convince anyone of anything. I get to just
I think we should do that. Okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Like I go for a bike ride in the morning and debate with myself, my priorities or whatever. But it's a relatively simple process. So it is very different, and it's scary. But so far, I'm doing good enough that I get to keep doing it.
Right. You're not 6 months in, like, I don't know if this is going to work. You said 4+ years. So
so I have a few games out now, and it's a little more like, there's a catalog of games. I can put them on sale and kind of like, sort of produce a little bit of income from those games that are not necessarily like my most recent release or whatever.
Evergreen,
still,
right? You got a little bit of income there.
I mean, I haven't had a big hit or anything, so it's not like I've had a windfall, but I've been stacking up base hits. And so I feel a little more, comfortable than I did a few years ago, but it's still very like, I gotta keep up with this, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
stressful.
No, it's a different kind of stress, but it's the risk reward, right? It's a lot of risk, but something hits and goes huge, right? You're getting the
Yeah,
lion's share.
that could be awesome if I could have,
Yeah.
animal well or something, you know?
Yes.
Or
Yeah. Billy,
that'd be
friend
nice.
of mine,
That'd be great. Or a Balatro.
yeah,
Like, can I just make one of those real quick? That'd be nice.
man, that thing is amazing. Yeah.
Although all those games
or
that you look
Peak,
at, you go, can't I make
yeah.
one of those real quick? And then you realize how much effort and time went into them. And it's like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
not easy.
Yeah. You spent 8 years making Animal Well.
Yeah,
And
exactly. So maybe I want the outcome of that, but maybe not the 8-year part, you know?
What about advice, handling fears and pushing through that? Because like, that's scary stuff, right? Like, what advice do you have for people?
Yeah, I definitely have kind of always had this sort of classic imposter syndrome thing where I just always felt like someone's going to find out that I don't know
Right. You're like,
what I'm doing.
shit, they're going to,
like they're going to realize I'm not qualified for this or whatever. I don't really have much of an answer to that other than trusting that if the people around you are trusting you to do something, you could do it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
People aren't generally in the business of going out really far on a limb for things, right? So like if they said, hey, you do this, like they think you can do it.
Right.
You know, and they probably got some...
They know something I don't know. Like I'll trust their opinion and they were right.
Yeah. So I think that's the general thing, which is that if you're getting an opportunity, you probably already deserve it and you're ready for it. The only other thing I think is just try not to like, I think at least, this is a creative field. I enjoy the creative aspect of the job very much, but I'm also not particularly precious with my creative ideas. And I found that to be a benefit for me in general. People always say this, they say, oh, ideas are worthless. Like ideas are free. Like an idea is nothing without execution, like all these kind of sayings, right?
Yeah.
And I generally completely agree with those statements. And I found that like, you can always come up with another idea. Yeah. And so like, if, don't hold on too tightly to an idea because you like it or because it's yours. Neither of those are good reasons to hang on to an idea. The only reason to hang on to an idea is because it solves what you're trying to do, And so if you can just kind of try to keep that mindset. In the example of games, for example, games are super subjective, right? You're trying to guess what's fun. And so there's always a million possible things you could do to your game to make it more fun, or make it better, whatever. And so a challenge is deciding between ideas and options and things you could do, right? Yeah. So what can often happen is that people think, oh, well, that's an issue of taste. And so you just have to have the right person making decisions and let their taste guide or whatever, something like that. And that can be fine in a scenario like me, where there's only one person. I don't have to answer to everyone. Or I don't need to convince other people to help me make this thing. But in a team setting, it's much better if you have a more objective way of sort of evaluating ideas. Right. And like I see this a lot where like a team will have some kind of either like a executive who's in charge and people are trying to guess what they want, or they're always worried about getting the approval of the executive because they need the approval to do stuff. Yeah. But so they all constantly playing this game where they're trying to get an okay. Right. And so they focus on that. And what they do then is they kind of, they put a lot of effort into trying to reverse engineer what that person wants. Yeah. Mind read. And that's not a very healthy setup, right? Because then that means I'm not really engaging creatively with the challenge. I'm just trying to guess what they want. Right. And so I kind of turn off my creative brain and just go, just tell me what you want. Because the only way we can get anything done here is if you like it and say yes. Is it blue or red? And I don't know how to guess what you like. So just tell me and I'll turn off my creative brain. And then a huge portion of the team is no longer sort of contributing to the project. They're just doing. And that's kind of a broken dynamic. And that happens a lot. Yeah, punch in, punch out. Because, they're just like, what does the boss want? Okay. Yeah, like I'm tuned out because it doesn't matter. Every time I come up with an idea, it gets shot down and I don't get a satisfactory answer as to why. And so I'm going to stop trying because I don't know how to calibrate my creativity to be fruitful. And that happens sometimes either because you have sort of too much like bureaucracy, or you have like a weird charismatic leader who has too much creative control and is not good at articulating the logic or reasoning behind their decision making. Okay. And so what I found is that you can get around that if you're in the position where you're the person people are trying to get approval from. you can put some things in place, like game pillars was one thing we would often do, which was like you take your game and you try to articulate like the core identity of your game in just a few sentences. Like, here's the 3 things that define our game.
Yeah.
And if you did a good job defining those, then at any various, creative crossroads,
Right. Go back to the pillars.
you should be able to, whenever a decision is made, you should be able to point to the pillars and it should be obvious why you made the decision. It's like, oh, should we like invest in multiplayer for this game or not? Multiplayer is popular. Okay, great. But like, look at our pillars, like our pillars for our game. Like there's nothing where multiplayer doesn't combine with these pillars in any way.
Yeah.
So like now I can justify why we're not putting multiplayer in. Or if multiplayer is so popular and important that like the leadership really wants it, then you can change the discussion from please add multiplayer to, look guys, the game is going to fundamentally change if we add multiplayer. Now you executives realize this is an expensive change, right? We're going to steer this whole ship.
Right.
To add
redesign and tech.
And like, so just that method of talking about things and having like, some kind of like, pillars or core creative statement or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Which I think is different than the marketing, like, key market, what do they call it? Unique selling point or whatever.
Yeah. USP.
It's different than that.
UPS,
it's like, this is for the team. Like this defines the game and it should be things that help you make creative decisions. But anyway, that can help a lot. And so if you're a leader, if you make a decision that's like a tough one where you're like, are we going to go this way or going to go that way? And you want to keep that buy-in from all them, but choose one or the other or neither. Then if you can show that the decision is coming from an objective measure of these ideas bouncing off against your shared vision that everyone already agreed upon is what you're trying to make, then people will survive that loss of like, oh, you didn't take my idea with remaining buy-in because they're like, okay, I get it. I get why.
Right. Yeah,
it wasn't because you just don't like me or you didn't like, or I can't guess what you like today or stuff like that. That's a big one for me is sort of like, and if you're on the other side, by the way, if you're the person who's trying to get ideas into something or sort of contribute creatively. And you're not in an environment where they do a great job of conveying all that stuff, then the best thing you can do is ask tons of questions. So like if you just get an answer like, well, make it green, not blue. And you can be like, okay, of course you can just ask why, but some people are not very good at articulating why. So then you got to find other ways to ask it. So what I would often do is sort of like say back to them, like what I think is the logic behind their decision. Like, okay, so basically what I'm hearing is, we've got a preference for this, which is based on research and blah, blah, blah. And like, so I think that if I got this right, like, is this why this decision came out this way? And it's pushing for a clarity that they didn't say all those things. So I say it back and then that gives them a chance to go, oh, no, it's this. And you go, oh, okay. And then you can say it back again and just like repeat that process a few times where anytime someone has something creative, I try to pitch it back to them because if I pitch it back to them or sort of restate what they said, it gives them a chance to like clarify the priorities or the hidden information that they didn't realize they weren't including. And you can kind of like refine the communication. And I find that practice to be super valuable.
Yeah. It starts like a dialogue like, oh, so what you mean is that.
There's one thing I think about a lot is when I say, like, let's say you just, even if I get a story, like you told me a story just now, and then I go, let me just tell that story back to you real quick. And then I say it back to you. I will inevitably like leave some stuff out, rephrase some things, emphasize some things and stuff. And it will change a little bit. And as me changing it demonstrates the parts that made sense to me, the parts that stuck with me, the parts I didn't understand, I glazed over, whatever. And it'll illuminate to you how much of that story and what aspects of it actually made it in to my brain.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Like,
and then
what do you
like,
mean?
Oh,
like, why is this not crystal clear?
That's not the way I thought I was conveying it,
Yeah.
So I think some people might have found me annoying because I would like go over something ad nauseum like that, but I did find it to be a very useful technique to sort of actually get to the communication, because I think a lot of times people think they're communicating and they're not. Like stuff is missing.
Yeah, there's just
but people let it go because they don't want to be rude or they don't want to take up their time or something.
Right. I don't want to look argumentative or whatever, but no, right, because then it's like it opens that dialogue, and then it's like, no, you're right, but I didn't mean this part of that thing. And I also think too, like being not super like precious about your ideas, right? Like,
Right.
you see that a lot, especially people early career, that it's just like, no, this is the thing, and if you don't do this thing, then I'm crushed, and I'm a terrible person. Like, no
Yeah.
person, like this is not.
Yeah. The for me, I think the act of solving the problem and coming up with a new idea is the fun part, the core of creativity. And so like if we had idea A and it doesn't work, but by looking at it, we realize it doesn't work because we have these various constraints on our problem. Like, the budget, we can't afford that. Or, the time, we can't afford that. Or we don't have that right skill set, or that's not popular in the market or whatever. Then you go, oh, okay, the constraints are clear now. Cool. I don't care about this idea anymore. I know what to solve for now.
Right.
And then I get to do the fun part again, which is try and come up with a clever solution for the new constraints that are more clear. And so like the idea wasn't that valuable. The process of solving the problem amongst constraints, like that's the fun part anyway. And the ideas are easy as long as you have something to bounce up against. You can come up with something.
Right.
It's not that hard,
Right.
Actually, the worst thing is to have a blank slate.
Yeah, you have no constraints. So
no,
then
thank you.
You have no boundaries, and you're just
I don't
wandering in the desert, right?
People always think they want that. You don't want that.
No. You want the constraints, and then that forces you to make trade-offs and creative solutions.
Yeah, it gives you like a seed to start from,
Yeah. So, project-wise, like, Jelly Car, Where's My Water, all your indie games, like, what is there a project that was your favorite or has been your favorite? Why?
Well, in the indie like era for me, my favorite project is always the one I'm starting now. Like it's always the new one. Because that's always the fun part. Everyone knows it's really fun to start projects, and it's like impossible to finish them.
Yes.
And that is universally true. And so I just make them small enough that I can get through the finishing part.
Right.
Because if the games get too big, I'll never finish it.
Land the plane, right?
Yeah, which is probably why I'll never make my animal well, because I don't think I could stick on something for 8 years and still be motivated to finish it. But anyway, but by far the experience of making Where's My Water was like the best experience I've had in a creative endeavor. It was incredible. It was awesome. It was, perfect storm of we had a good team. They were given a pretty clear goal.
Right.
Those constraints I was talking about. We had a nice set of constraints that gave us a lot of leeway, but also clearly defined what we were going to do. And because it was like, we had made Jelly Car, which was a fairly popular mobile game, but not like top of the charts popular.
No, right. Like
and the top of the charts games at that time were Angry Birds, Cut the Rope, Fruit Ninja. And so we looked at those and we went, okay, well, Birds Cut the Rope, that's the same type of game as Jelly Car. It's like a physics puzzly game.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of game our team is naturally suited to make. So then we looked at those games and we were, and like the leadership was like, okay, go make another one of these, like physics, puzzle, 3-star progression type games, like Cut the Rope and Angry Birds. But this time, make sure you have a character. Like Jelly Car, we identified a weakness in Jelly Car. There was no character, so there was not a lot of emotion in the game. You don't really get attached to anything in the game. The car is kind of an abstract drawing that you're just sort of
it's kind of cartoonish, or
it's like a cartoon flip book come to life or whatever. But
exactly.
you don't feel as connected to a character or anything in it.
Right.
And so we're like, okay, let's keep the things we know, but add a character. So those are our constraints. Physics-based puzzle game, 3-star progression, character. That's a lot of constraints.
Yeah.
And mobile, of course.
Mobile.
Was obvious. But there was still a lot of room there to come up with any kind of idea we wanted, and we came up with a really cool idea with the sort of cut the dirt, let the water flow physics thing.
Yeah.
And then we just had, really naturally developed the game. We had a great working dynamic between me and the art lead, Vincent, and the tech lead, Jay, and other designers and producers on the team. And like, we just worked so well together. We all just sat next to each other and we're very collaborative and quick, and everyone's ideas counted. Like, I really don't feel any personal ownership over the design of the game. I don't think of that game as something I came up with. All I remember is that team made that game together, and like I couldn't, I might be able to go back and find individual things and go, oh, that was so-and-so's idea. But on the whole, it was just our game.
Yeah.
And we just like constantly debated and talked about like our approach to it, and it went fairly smoothly. Technically, we actually went out kind of on a limb, like, we had to make our own like weird little engine to make it, and like the physics simulation didn't exist off the shelf, and like those were risks
right.
that in retrospect, I was like, my God, we didn't know if we were going to even be able to make it, but we were kind of naive and we were just like, cool, guess we're making this now. And
we'll
just
figure
did
it out.
You know?
Yeah.
And we did, and so, and then of course, the fact that it was popular at the end, obviously sort of paints that whole experience in an even more positive light in retrospect. Because I just remember, I'm so happy with the outcome, but the actual process of making the game was it was awesome.
Yeah. And for people who may not be super familiar with it, two things, like it was huge, right? Like it was a massive hit. It turned into like a kind of IP where they were putting Disney characters later in it. Yeah. It was a little bit of that, like, oh, Spaceballs, the lunchbox. They're like, we got a gold here, man. This thing hit.
Yeah, we had little
there you go.
Plushies got made and everything.
Yeah, plushies. That's cool.
It was a rare case where an IP from games did go a little bit into the rest of the company at Disney, which I don't know if ever happened before or since. Oh, maybe Club Penguin, I guess you could count, but that was like they bought that, from an external.
Yeah, from the studio. Yeah,
startup, but yeah.
Well, and the fact that it was done, internally, and it was original IP, being at Disney at the time was.
That was a rare opportunity.
That was super rare. Yeah, because like when Wide Load did Guilty Party, it was still Wide Load. It wasn't part of Disney. And then after Wide Load got acquired by Disney, there just wasn't an appetite for original IP. It's just like, we got Marvel,
and generally
man,
in general there wasn't. We were in a weird, lucky pocket of place and time where mobile wasn't quite. It was still developing. It was kind of a Wild West, and it was like all the games that were doing well were not licensed. They were like these weird, quirky little unique ones. Yeah. And we happened to have this internal team who had made Jellycar, and we had new leadership who had a little bit of leeway when they first came in to kind of do whatever they wanted, And so like we had this weird window of time where we got to make it. And this actual story of after it came out and like post Where's My Water to me leaving Disney is a general tale of more and more like, okay, but let's focus on our priority properties, kind of a thing sort of creeping in. Some people might cynically say we did that with Where's My Water, because we kind of did. Like Where's My Water came out, and then they were like, "Cool, can you make one for Phineas and Ferb, please?" And so we made Where's My Perry, which was like a spin-off game with the Phineas and Ferb characters. I actually think that game turned out awesome and doesn't feel like a
bolt-on license or right.
Because I think we kind of went above and beyond and like came up with new mechanics that suited the IP, but were also kind of native to the game design stuff, and like it turned out pretty cool. But then there was another one we did, Where's My Mickey, and it started to stretch it a little further in terms of like, okay, you guys, we tried really hard to come up with mechanics that achieve the same thing, but it was getting harder and harder. And then the business model changed, and we needed to make a free-to-play version, and that was never going to work because the concept of the game was not suited for free-to-play at all, and like blah blah blah. But anyway,
that was a very just side tangent. That was a very weird time in the industry where it was the switch to free to play, right? And then all these games were like, it's a standalone experience, and now it's like, let's recalibrate and just hack some shit in to make it free to play, and then force people to, level up,
have something to buy inside or whatever.
You see all these games that were great as standalone games, and then the free to play not being there from the ground up just felt so contrived.
That was very difficult. And our studio, made Where's My Water, made this sort of sequels and stuff, and then really struggled to come up with new games that worked in free to play. Partly because it's just hard to do in the first place, but also partly because we were just not like built for it. You know what I mean? Like we were like, find the fun and make a fun little cool interaction and then build a game around it. And like, we were good at that, but like starting from the point of view of more economy design or whatever, was not really our forte. And so we really struggled with that.
Those kind of games tend to have like product managers and spreadsheets, and like those kind of folks tend to drive the design more than the actual designs on it.
Certainly it's a weird kind of the constraints are very different there.
What's exciting you the most about the industry right now?
I mean, for me, I guess partially because I'm indie myself, but also I pretty much only seem to be playing other small, weird indie games. So I'm mostly interested in the kind of interesting, unique, weird games and kind of genres that are sort of popping up and becoming interesting and stuff that are kind of not AAA genres, Like a simple example, and I actually don't want to make a horror game, but horror games are like a pretty interesting thing to look at these days for indie because they work really well for the like smaller price point, unique experience with like one specific idea. They're also, they don't need a ton of content to make a horror game. You don't need to make like, oh, there's the ice world and here's the tundra world and here's the, like tons and tons of art. You kind of make like one abandoned factory and you can play it over and over again, just the way the game design works. So it's like a good indie genre. And I think things like that are pretty interesting to see, like obviously sort of roguelike deck builders would be the other one that everyone wants to make these days. And that's also for the same reason, I think. It's an interesting genre that people want to play that suits indie. It's not really production heavy. It's more concept heavy, right? Like you don't need to make a million assets to make, Inscription or Balatro or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Or Slay the Spire or whatever. You don't need AAA amount of content, so you can.
Right.
It's a better fit for a smaller budget, but there's an audience for it, and it's an interesting little genre that kind of works well in indie. I think that the development of some of these kind of interesting genres that are not really AAA, but are kind of popping up is kind of pretty cool and an interesting aspect of what's going on these days.
What about threats that you see ahead? Like, what concerns you?
I think the thing that's the biggest bummer for me right now is, well, I guess there's two of them. There's the obvious, like, big giant AI topic, which we could probably talk about a little bit.
Yeah, which is actually my next question, right? Yeah.
The other one is platform. What would you call it? Like, most of the current platforms in which you can release games on right now are very mature platforms, meaning they've been around for a while, they're pretty well established, and so it's very, very competitive. There's like tons of games, tons of people making games. So if you're on Steam, there's a million games coming out on Steam every 2 seconds. If you're on mobile, there's a million games coming out every 2 seconds.
Crazy. Yeah, right.
Console maybe a little less so, but still, like, the marketplace is pretty saturated for games.
Yeah.
So, and I've been through, mobile becoming a thing, which was just this huge new platform. It was both interesting in terms of that it was a new form factor, new input, and therefore kind of a green field for design. Yeah. But also it was just like a big opportunity sort of market-wise, right? Like a new market was opening up. And that was such a cool experience to be part of, and to sort of be on that wave and be a part of it, and was really exciting. And I guess I don't see one of those coming. Like VR, I guess, was maybe going to be one, but didn't really manifest in the same way.
Right.
Certainly not as big of an opportunity and market shift and change.
Mobile,
Certainly it's interesting from a design point of view, for sure. It has all the same like 100%. Unique novel design challenges as say mobile did or whatever, but it hasn't been quite as enticing and interesting and exciting of a big shift as a new platform opening up. And I don't know, I don't really see one on the horizon right now. I guess you could argue that maybe like augmented reality or whatever, but that doesn't really have a form factor yet that's a real thing.
Right.
And then you got other tiny little things like a Playdate or something, or like Switch 2, which has a few unique hardware features and stuff, but they're kind of small little corners of the market, and they're not really like a big new, let's all go try and figure this new opportunity out. So I kind of lament that there hasn't been a new big platform or device or something to sort of show up and kind of invigorate both creativity but also market opportunity.
Yeah, market opportunity, right.
And I would love to see another one of those, but I don't, my crystal ball is saying, outlook is unclear for that. I don't see any obvious new big platform or device opportunity.
Right.
So
I mean, the Switch 2 is huge and it's the fastest selling platform, but it's not new, it's iterative, right? And it's
by Nintendo standards, it's traditional, right? It's got joysticks and buttons, like it's kind of normal. You could say that the mouse functionality or something is kind of unique, but like it'd be a pretty big bet to be like, well, let's just make a whole game betting on that making a weird novel mouse game for Switch 2 is going to pay off. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe,
Yeah, I wouldn't take that bet. I don't think. Yeah.
Right. Whereas like when mobile was kind of starting to take off, like let's go make a mobile game. That was not a dumb idea. Like that was a great idea,
Right.
So yeah, I kind of lament that. I would love for there to be some kind of new platform opportunity of some kind that was really exciting and kind of presented a new sort of fresh phase or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and the big consoles, the Sonys and the Xboxes, it almost seems like they're running out of gas, right? Like,
Yeah,
and
they
it's
seem to
like,
be kind of,
we'll do one more, and then it's just everything's in the cloud and
like
anything
devices
anywhere,
less and less the
So
focus. Yeah.
yeah, so
So,
it's
I mean, that's interesting, I guess, in its own way, but not in the way I'm describing of like
yeah,
an interesting new constraint to sort of try to solve and make new, novel, weird, interesting games or something,
yeah, yeah. What about you kind of hinted to it, but like, how do you see AI impacting design and game dev, in general? Like, what are your thoughts?
You just say AI and my gag reflex like gets triggered is like this base point. Like I'm just like very this. And I
Yeah.
guess I'm slightly worried that this is my first time where I'm getting older and something new comes along and I'm like, back in my day we didn't need that. And this is the first time where I'm gonna switch to being an old person and be like behind the times or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, it feels like a lot of the criticisms are pretty justified and pretty real. So I don't really know. I mean, for me personally, I don't see any excitement around using it myself. I see an inevitability that sort of like, as these LLMs that are good at producing media of some kind become even more, I don't know, good at, barfing back something based on what you ask them to do, that inevitably there will be a desire to use them to save money, save time, or this like magical fantasy of like, what if people could just type in what game they want and it'll like make one for them or whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That part doesn't really worry me too much because I don't think people are very good at knowing what they want.
Yeah.
So if you just let them like say their fantasy, they'll realize real quick that that's not actually what they want, or it's not as interesting as they thought.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you just ask anyone like, well, what do you want to eat? They'll say cake. And then they eat enough cake and they go, oh,
yeah.
Well, I don't actually only want cakes, but no one will ever say, please give me a interesting sequence of different meals. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
Or maybe they will. I don't know. You know what I'm saying though? It's like, I think that's a little, I guess I don't stress out about like, someone's going to show up and like, we'll be able to generate a whole game from a prompt and just like, you won't even need the entire games industry anymore or something like that.
Right.
But the more sort of like, what about using it to make art assets, or like, what about using it to make like, people like to bring up, I don't know, like NPCs that you can talk to and you don't have to plan everything they're going to say because you could have the thing come up with stuff.
Right.
And like, I'm certain that's going to happen. There's no question people are going to want to do that and try it. And there's a sort of alluring theoretical promise to it. It doesn't feel particularly relevant to me because the things I like to play and make almost unanimously have a real like finite sensibility to them. You know what I mean? Like they come from like a certain strong point of view, and the person that made it sort of hand is visible on the thing, and that's part of what I like about it. Is like I get to like explore the weird little world that this person has crafted for me, or the intricate little puzzles that this person has designed for me. And like I enjoy those types of experiences. So the promise of infinite variety actually doesn't appeal to me very much. I can see how it can appeal to the general kind of person who likes games and like, oh, I want to play Skyrim, but what if Skyrim was like unlimited or whatever? Yeah. Because the fantasy of playing that game maybe is a bit more of an open-ended fantasy of like just living in a medieval town and being a hero or something.
Yeah.
And me, I just don't gravitate to those types of games or fantasies as much. So like, I don't really, it doesn't feel super like, it's like low proximity to me. It feels like it's a thing happening on the hills over there. And I'm like, I don't really think they should be doing that, but I guess it's not really my problem. I'm not over there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. For me, like I use not so much on the generative stuff, but just like on the LLM stuff. I find it really helpful for like writing and things like that, where I'm like, this sounds weird. I'm like, rephrase this, and oh, okay, or just like Google on steroids, right? When you're trying to find answers to things, and I have it scripted where it's not just hallucinating and using its own database, but it's like use the web for reference and cite references when
Where you get the stuff
when
from.
you're giving me the information. I'll go to Reddit and go to things like that. So, that kind of stuff, I'm in it every day and I find it interesting. But yeah, the idea of just like make me a driving game that is fun, enter,
Yeah.
maybe 10, 20 years from now, but yeah,
Right.
it's not like it's around the corner, but
Yeah. It is one thing that does make me think about too, though, is that especially as like a designer, like most designers obviously don't actually code or anything, right? They sort of more serve as like a viaduct of communication and unification of the ideas, and that's the more like the role that they play in the larger team. Actually, the thing needed most for that role is being a very good communicator, because you need to sort of like the main thing you're doing is communicating, right? You're either verbally like leading meetings to get everyone on the same page, or you're writing down and sort of consolidating, taking all these ideas and sort of like, distilling them so that the team can then refer to it later and actually make the thing they all agreed to make. Or you're going and talking to a programmer or an artist or an animator or a, VO person and really discussing in detail like how this thing works and all the little nuances so that you end up with the content you need, or that they know what to make, or they can contribute best and stuff. And so, being a good communicator is extremely valuable. And I do think the one like weird silver lining I see with like ChatGPT and LLMs and like these tools that where you use text to sort of prompt them is that I guess being good at that is kind of the same skill as being good at communicating in general, because if you can articulate things clearly and well, then you get a better output out of the thing. And that's true when you're working with a machine and when you're working with a human. So to a certain degree, like I teach at a college here part-time, and I teach prototyping and light coding for game design majors. And so it's always a tricky thing, because like most of them they're not interested in coding necessarily, right?
Right.
But we sort of present it as a necessary skill so that you can prototype ideas and you can communicate better with technical people, because you understand more what they're actually talking about.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But the topic is going to come up in our classes of like, well, what do we do about if I make an assignment, I'm like, hey, prototype a game, and they want to use these tools, these AI tools to assist them. Is that good or bad? Right? Like we're going to have to decide on that. And part of me is like, no, it's bad, because like I think I'm better at being a designer because I actually understand the code enough to talk to engineers in an effective way and understand things like trade-offs and like how you're going to actually implement these things. And when something I can say, it sounds simple to me when I say it in a sentence, is really complicated to write in code, and other things that sound complicated are like really easy to write in code, and actually understanding all that is really valuable. But then at the same time, it's like, well, but if you can, articulate to the computer how to write the code you need well enough that you actually succeed at implementing the thing you need to implement, then maybe that's a good design practice, because it's like you're working with a coder in the future. Right. And you did a good job. You had to do a good job there too of articulating how the thing works and what you need out of it and stuff. So like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of torn
and I think
topic.
And people, when they graduate and get jobs, they're going to be using it anyway.
Yeah, most likely.
It's pretty much
sort of
everyone in the
inevitable,
industry.
and it's a tool. It's not going to go away. That's for sure.
Right. Get more powerful and accurate. So yeah, these are weird times.
Yeah.
What about a funny or unusual story from working in the industry? I'm sure you've got a batch of them, but what would you like to share?
So we talked about Where's My Water, and then how after it came out, they were like, hey, can you make a Phineas and Ferb version of it? And one thing that's kind of funny, so I sort of alluded to that we were like, okay, we don't want to just like take out our character and put a different character on the screen. And,
swap.
The 2-second backstory of Where's My Water. We came up with the mechanic. We were like, okay, the game is cut dirt and stuff to get water from point A to point B. And so the win condition for every level is getting like enough drops to the goal location, right? Like 20 drops of water or whatever, right? So it'll like fill up. And if you get enough drops, you pass the puzzle. And so we struggled. But remember, one of our constraints was you need a character. Yeah. And we were like, what character can we integrate into this game? It's about getting 20 drops of water to a random location on the screen. Yeah. And we were like, well, filling up a container is the most visual way to convey like that you've got enough drops, right? Like the container's empty and then the water's filling it up. It crosses a line or whatever. And you're like, I did it. Right. You're like, okay, so this character is going to need an empty container that needs to not be empty. But like scale wise, we can't let them take up too much space on the screen, right? It's already a phone's tiny and like, we don't have a lot of space.
Right.
So we eventually realized that after trying a bunch of ideas that the container needed to be big compared to the character, which led us to bathtub. Like, bathtub's like a big container, character is about the size of it. And it's a really visceral thing to like fill it up.
Right.
So we ended up needing a character who wanted to take a shower or to fill the bathtub up.
Right.
But this game takes place from a side view. You're cutting away dirt. You're underground, basically. So
right.
Like,
so
how do we get an underground character who are like, there's that funny joke about alligators in the sewers who live like underground in New York. What if there was one, alligators are dirty. What if there's one who likes to be clean and wants to take a shower? That's kind of funny. That's how we came up with the character, right?
Yeah.
So the character came downstream from the needs of the gameplay.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were very averse to just being like, well, cool, we'll just say one of the Phineas and Ferb characters wants to take a shower. Like that was like,
right.
Like we're not going to do that. So then we looked around at Phineas and Ferb and we came up with the idea of Perry, the platypus, is Agent P. He's like a secret agent. And like every episode is like a subplot of him fighting the Doofenshmirtz character. And he's like this like spy drama that's always happening. And he has these like crazy tubes where he like somewhere in the house hits a button and a secret door opens and he goes in a tube and it takes him down underground to his headquarters where he gets his briefing.
Right.
So we came up with the idea of that those tubes break and like he gets stuck halfway through and you need to repower the tube so he can get to his briefing. That gave us an underground reason why a character was stuck and needed something. And we came up with like a hydroelectric little machine so that why water would convert to power so that he could power up his thing. Anyway, and then we were like, okay, cool. We figured that out, but we want to change the mechanics this time. The original game was like you had water and then dirty water and then like a lava type liquid that would eat away at the dirt. And we had grass where water would hit the grass and consume the grass and the grass would grow, but dirty water would consume the grass and you could clear it away. And so you had like all these fun interactions between all the elements. We wanted new ones. So our initial thought was electricity because we're going to power the tube, right? The tube is busted and you need to power it up. So originally our thought was that there would be like wires somewhere in the level. They were like sparking and other wires over here that are sparking. And if you could connect them with water, you would complete the circuit and power the thing. So it wasn't about getting the water into the tub. It was going to be about getting the water to be in such a configuration that the two hot wires were connected with water.
Connected. Okay.
Which was going to be really different from a level design point of view, right? Because we could put these two nodes anywhere we wanted.
Right. Yeah.
So a simple level would be like they're right here, just get a few drops between them. But a complex level would be like they're like this, and you need a single continuous thing of water connecting them or whatever. We were like, that's so cool. This is going to be really great for level design. So we went and pitched it to the Phineas and Ferb creators, who were super cool, by the way. And they were like, that's amazing. That's really great. One small problem. You're basically encouraging electrocuting with water. And like, that's a really, they were like, on our show, we have to be really careful about things that kids want to emulate, especially that show, because the kids did crazy things on the show. So they were always really careful about trying to reduce the chances that kids would emulate the things they saw on the show.
Right.
And they were like, you're basically saying, let's connect batteries to water and stuff. And like, that's not a good idea. And we didn't thought about that at all. We were so excited about our game design.
Yeah.
And so we had to scrap that and come up with a different one. We came up with a different thing that was all about states of matter. So it was like freezing and unfreezing and turning into steam and stuff, which turned out pretty cool. Okay. But it was pretty funny that we kind of walked into a pretty obvious flaw in our design from their point of view that we hadn't thought about at all.
Right. And it's like, and then kids are going to get electrocuted on the 5 o'clock news.
We were like,
shit.
Right.
Yeah.
But think of the levels we could make,
Right. So you talked about playing like indie games and stuff. Is there a game or two that you're playing right now that you're really excited about?
Yeah, I just played, that was good timing. I just played this game that I've been following on Twitter for a while. I actually don't know how to say the name out loud because the name of the game is Ooh. It's like an O with 2 dots of it, whatever that is from whatever language that's from. Yeah, it's the one with 2 dots, not with the tilde, not with the other accent marks. And then 2 lowercase O's, which looks like the character in the game. It looks like a little character with ears and then a tail.
Okay.
But anyway, this game is called Ooh. I don't know. In the game, they describe the character as a bomb caterpillar, because what you are is you're this little character, and the tail of you is two pieces that are bombs. And you can walk around and you can plant a bomb, and now you only have one left. It follows you around as you walk around.
Yeah.
And then at any point you can detonate the bomb, and then it blows up, and then it comes back to you. And so basically it's a little puzzle platformer where like you plant a bomb, stand on top of it, blow it up to jump into the air, or plant a bomb, stand next to it to blow it up and shoot across a gap. And then because you have two bombs, you can combine them in lots of interesting ways. So if you make a bomb here, stand on top of this one, blow this one up, you and this bomb go flying this way, and then you blow up that bomb and go up in the air, and you can do like an L-shaped move, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's pretty clever.
It's just a really clever, tight little character design, like what you can do with it. You have a couple mechanics. They're super simple. They're easy to understand. And then the game just finds every little interesting thing you can do with that. And puts it into a world where you think you're figuring it all out. Like every room you go into, you're like, wait, how do I get up there? And then you discover something else you can do. And then now the rooms past that are going to make use of that. And then you go to another room, you're like, wait, there's no even way I can get up there. I need a bomb on my head. I don't have a way to put a bomb. Wait a minute. You know, and then you figure it out. And like,
right.
And so it's both, it's a clever
it works,
game.
it's exciting, right?
You feel like it's genius 50 times in this game. And the designer put them all in the right order, in the exact right layout to be just like this perfect little
I'll have to check
package.
that out.
It's
platform? Is it
glorious.
Steam
it's
or
on
mobile?
Steam. It'll probably come to other platforms eventually, but it's on Steam right now. It's like $10. It's like maybe 3 hours long. And that's the thing. Like that's the exact right length for that mechanic. Like, you know, the designer didn't add like, it's not like halfway through you get the wing power up and now you can like flap and fly around so that we can have more levels.
Right.
It's like,
16 hour.
It's you and your two bombs. And this is how big the game can be, because this is every cool thing you can do with you and your two bombs.
And that thing,
so,
that makes sense.
It's like the epitome of just like a super perfectly little design package. Does everything it's setting out to do perfectly. So check it out. Cool. It's awesome.
Yeah, check it out.
It's also kind of the type of game that, you know, it's in the same ballpark as the type of games I like to make, you know, so I aspire to make something like this someday that has the same effect on me, on players as this game did on me.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll put it in the show notes. Anything I should have asked you about but didn't?
I made a weird game where you do gymnastics that's like it's called Pro Gymnast Simulator, and it's like way too hardcore gymnastics physics game. And if you see that, you might be like, what's going on there? And the backstory there is I just did gymnastics all growing up and did like trapeze for many years here in LA, and like love gymnastics, love circus, love all that stuff. And I've always wanted to kind of translate that joy into a game or two. And this is the closest thing I've made. So that's the backstory on that weird item in my catalog, because there's not very much like.
When did that come out?
That was that one I mentioned that I was making in parallel at Universal and then finished once I got laid off. So it was my very first Steam release. I think it came out in 2020.
Where do people find you online? Like, where's the best place to look you up? And I'll add to the...
Yeah, I'm Walaber on all the various like social media platforms. Usually it's Walaber or like Walaber ENT, like entertainment. Mm-hmm. I can't bring myself to call it X. I'm still on Twitter, even though Twitter's kind of a mess these days. I'm on Blue Sky.
Yeah.
I'm on
Blue Sky. There you go. I'm on Blue Sky.
I'm on Instagram. I post on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube Shorts, like videos pretty frequently of just me working on my games and stuff.
Yeah.
And most of that comes from me doing live streams. So I stream on Twitch 3 days a week where I just work on my games live and
3 days
talk about what I'm doing and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I only stream for a couple hours each time, but I do it 3 times a week. And I just work on different stuff. Like, you know, earlier today, I streamed and I was putting together a playtest build of some DLC I'm working on for my my racing game called Parking Garage Rally Circuit. I've got a bunch of new content, and I was putting it all together. And then after my stream, I released the playtest build so people could try out the content and I can make fixes and stuff. And, you know, other times I'm fixing bugs, or next stream I'm going to start working on a new game, you know? So it's sort of a little bit of everything.
But so you got an audience on Twitch. Yeah, no, that's...
Yeah, and it's fun because, you know, being solo-ish, it's nice to have sort of a bit more of a communal component.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking of. So you don't feel so isolated, right? Like there's a kid.
Like there's people who are hanging around and they ask questions or they give suggestions. And I sort of feel a little bit more directly connected to the people that are actually playing the games or are interested in the games I'm making and stuff like that. So that's something that I just sort of stumbled into and have really enjoyed doing and kept with it. So yeah, come check out a stream on Twitch, see what game dev is like, and ask a question or two.
Yeah, no, I'll put it in the show notes, and that's cool to do that. Yeah, that's really smart. Yeah, that's
there's actually like a whole community of devs who stream on Twitch, and if people listening to this have never thought to go look at Twitch for that would make sense. You would think that the only thing you see there is people playing games, right?
Right. Yeah. Right.
But actually, there's a lot of creative people on Twitch, people who do music, people who do art, and people who make games. And it's really fun. Like when I'm not streaming myself, I often have a Twitch tab open and I'm watching one of the various people I know work on their games and kind of, sort of, it's almost like you're co-working with them.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And that's really cool. And I've met a lot of really great people through that as well. So if you haven't thought to check that out, go check it out. Don't just watch me. Like go see all the various people in the category on Twitch is software and game development, I think is the name of it.
Okay.
And so if you hit like browse, you'll see a bunch of games, but there's also like just chatting and there's art and there's software and game development. And you click on that and there'll be at any given time 30, 40 people that are live streaming, working on their video games.
No, that is really cool. Like no one has ever brought that up before. And I've gone on Twitch before for like music stuff, just like background music and things and DJ type stuff. But I have to check that out.
It's like a little corner of Twitch. It's not the most popular, but it's really fun. There's a really great community there.
Great. And then just, last question, like what's one piece of advice you give others working in the industry right now?
I guess the industry is always in a state of change. And although right now it feels like it's, it always feels like it's, this is the craziest time ever to be making games. So maybe that's just the way it is. I don't know. But, it does feel like there's a lot of upheaval. There's a lot of layoffs. There's a lot of changes. And so it's easy to sort of back up and sort of take a sort of doom kind of look at things and be like, oh boy, maybe my advice should be do something else.
Right.
But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people really focus on the big visible portion of the industry, which is sort of like AAA and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the industry is much, much, much bigger than that and much more diverse than that. And so like, there's weird people like me who there's no reason most people have ever heard of. Right.
But you found your niche.
But I'm like making weird little games and like some people are playing them and like, it's kind of working out okay. And
paying your bills.
So there's a whole spectrum of stuff like that, that's sort of not as easy to find if all you do is go look at the sort of places where people blast out like hot takes on things,
Right.
So maybe go find the friendly, weird corners of your local social media or whatever, or, and kind of look for the portions of the industry that are maybe more quietly just kind of doing interesting things.
Right.
You can find a lot of cool people there. You can find a lot of interesting projects and maybe even opportunities if that's something
to work on a project, right? Like, hey, I've got ideas and I'm an artist, but I don't know where to connect with people. Maybe you find
I mean, like my games I make a lot by myself, but not entirely, and so like one of the things I've done recently is collaborate with musicians. So for Parking Garage Rally Circuit, I was like, this is like a Sega style Saturn arcade type game. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the style I'm going for. I want blue skies and I want like ska music. You know what I mean? Like I want like horns, like, and I just want to like, pedal to the metal Sega, Sega, and I had listened to a band that I just happened to have heard of called the Holophonics, and they had some cover albums where they did ska covers of game soundtracks. And I listened to those, and they were like copyright friendly, so you could play them on your stream and you wouldn't get like a copyright thing
slapped with that. Yeah.
And so I had knew of them from that, and I just reached out to them and was like, "There's no way, but any chance I could license one of your songs for this dumb game I'm making?" And they came back and were like, "Actually, can we make a whole soundtrack for your game?" And I was like, yeah." Wow. And so we ended up with this incredible full original soundtrack for my tiny little game because I was looking around in the right places and reaching out to people, like, and so like those kind of weird connections can happen, but the only way they can happen is if you're, seeking out those sort of places where people are, talking about what they're doing, but it's maybe not, something everyone's finding, so.
Yeah.
And a similar thing, I like from a streamer who I knew who also does games has a relative who's a composer, and I ended up working with them to make the music for my next game. And you know, all these connections have to come about some way, right? And so, you know, if you don't have like a weird niche that you're part of, go find one that you're interested in naturally, and then opportunities will often present themselves just because you're meeting people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And with the way the internet is now and all these platforms and stuff, you can find your people. You can find the things, right? Like it's not like olden times when you had to go on CompuServe and have the modem and see if you could connect, and it was a very small thing. It's, you know, it's everywhere. So there's no excuse. Go find your
when
tribe,
I want
as they
to
say.
work with someone, I tend to ask people I know if they know anyone who would be a good fit for the thing I'm trying to do, or I've become aware of someone who I've been following on social media. I haven't necessarily interacted with that much. They might not even know me or whatever, but I've been following what they do or whatever. And then when the time comes and I have an opportunity, I reach out and be like, is there any chance you do this? You know, so, you know, you never know. If you put your stuff out there, people will see it and maybe something will come from it.
No, that's cool. Well, thank you so much, Tim. This has been really great. It's been nice to connect and hear your backstory and all the cool stuff you're doing.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.